with a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood sign. This is all so crazy.
Good evening, fans of the judicial branch, and welcome to the U.S. Supreme Court March Madness Tournament. We have senior analyst Kayla Drudy and our fabulous correspondent Jaya Tewari at the scene to provide live updates as the tournament goes along. For our first up, we have our Constitution region. We have our number 1 seed, Marbury versus Madison, versus our number 8 seed, McCulloch versus Maryland. Now, Kayla, what do you think is going to go in this round?
Well, I think Marbury versus Madison is definitely favored.
Now we'll cut to our correspondent Jaya Tewari to see who won this round.
Marbury versus Madison easily beat McCulloch versus Maryland because without Marbury versus Madison establishing judicial review, we wouldn't even be able to hold this tournament.
Now, on to our number 1 and number 8 scene for the Bill of Rights region. We have DC versus Heller versus Tinker versus Des Moines. So who do you think is favored to win?
Definitely DC versus Heller, just because of how prominent gun discussion is in our society today.
Let's cut to Jaya to see who won this round.
With our second game finished, DC versus Heller has beat Tinker v. Des Moines. With a now conservative majority on the Supreme Court, DC versus Heller will likely be very important in the next few years.
Now, moving on to our civil rights region. So our number 1 seed is Brown versus Board of Education versus our number 8, Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, I think we all know where that's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, Brown versus Board just blows Plessy versus Ferguson out of the water.
Definitely.
I mean, come on.
Let's go to Jaya.
Brown v. Board of Education absolutely demolished Plessy versus Ferguson. This was totally expected considering that Brown versus Board of Education's decision overturned Plessy versus Ferguson. But either way, it was very nice to see the Browns win in some kind of game.
We'll do it all.
Alright, on to political process. So our number 1 seed is New York Times versus the United States. And this is very unfair in my opinion to pair this up with Bush versus Gore as the number 8 seed. What do you think about that?
I mean, Bush versus Gore really doesn't stand a chance.
New York Times did come out on top.
Let's discuss our first round and the results. Alright, so we had no upsets in the Constitution region. So Schneck v. U.S. upset Engel v. Vitale. What do you think about that lineup?
Well, I just think Schneck v. U.S. is more important for today's society because we talk more about free speech than we do about prayer in public schools.
Now, there were no upsets in the civil rights region, and we didn't have any upsets in the political process region either.
And now someone else is getting.
Welcome back. We have our results in from our Sweet 16 lineup. We have Marbury v. Madison versus U.S. v. Nixon. What happened there?
We did see a second victory for Marbury v. Madison just because judicial review, pretty important stuff.
U.S. v. Lopez versus Dred Scott v. Sanford. The importance of Dred Scott really diminished after the freeing of all slaves in the 13th Amendment. Moving on to our Bill of Rights lineups, DC v. Heller versus Schneck v. U.S.
Ultimately, we did see DC v. Heller win just because gun rights are a hot topic right now.
Gideon v. Wainwright versus Miranda v. Arizona.
Gideon v. Wainwright took the victory just because without it, Miranda v. Arizona could not have been as major as it was.
Finally, on to our political process lineups. Now, New York Times versus United States versus New York Times versus Sullivan. Ultimately, this one went to the New York Times versus U.S. because of the importance of the freedom of press.
We saw Shelby County v. Holder win just because that's a controversial one. I mean, it's pretty recent and the Supreme Court limited voting rights, so that's an interesting one.
Yeah. What a whirlwind this has been. So, for our Constitution region, we have Marbury v. Madison versus U.S. v. Lopez. Now, I think it's no surprise to anyone that Marbury v. Madison came up on top because of the importance of judicial review. On to our next game, we have DC v. Heller versus Gideon v. Wainwright. And I think because of how important the Second Amendment is in today's political dialogue, DC v. Heller really came through in this round. On to our next game, Griswold v. Connecticut versus Roe v. Wade. Griswold v. Connecticut came out to win this round because without Griswold, there would be no Roe v. Wade. Now, on to our final round for the Elite Eight. New York Times v. US versus Shelby County v. Holder. Now, I'm very surprised with Shelby County's performance during this tournament. It looks like they could even go all
Nothing can beat our plays and decisions. My team's signature move, judicial review, set the precedent for every single team in the league.
Our winner, Marbury v. Madison. No surprise, really, given the power of judicial review. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.